Doctors of Reddit, what is the funniest thing you've heard someone say while under the effects of anesthesia? I took care of an 11-year-old boy in the ER a little while back. I gave him ketamine for a fracture reduction, or in other words setting and splinting of a broken bone. As he was coming around he started with typical stream of consciousness babbling, and then he seemed to snap awake to say, "I'm frickin' I'm gonna do so many drugs when I get older," to the amusement of his parents. They thought it was funny and cute, but I'm pretty sure I created a monster. I'm generally a pretty even-keeled guy, basically never feel anxious, but when I had my knee surgery they gave me a Valium because they give one to just about everyone. Man, I did not know it was possible to feel that calm. I totally get why people get hooked on that stuff, and how if you got used to that level of serenity it'd be hard to come back down. Told this story before, but surgeon here was doing varicose veins surgery on a very posh middle-aged lady. Very cut class accent. There was an anesthetic that we used that sometimes induced some hallucinations, either going under or coming out of anesthesia, and heard some funny things. Anyway, this lady was in recovery, just coming out of the anesthetic. The team were around waiting for her to wake up and gag a little on the tube in her throat for breathing. So we knew it was time to remove it. She gagged, we removed the tube. She smacked her lips and said loudly, in her incredible accent, "That's the best bit of dong I have had in years." The whole recovery room just fell about laughing. Luckily she didn't remember it. Not a doctor, but my dad had been given the goofy juice and was about to be wheeled into surgery. He looks at the anesthesiologist and asks, "Will the nurses have big titties?" My mom and his mom were in the room, laughing hysterically. The anesthesiologist chuckled and said, "Okay, yeah, you're ready for surgery." I mean, that would concern me too. When I woke from having my wisdom teeth removed, I asked the nurse to take me to the beach and release me back into the ocean so I could be with my people. She kept refusing, so I started accusing her of fiddling with me whilst I was asleep. I ended up getting moved to a different recovery area, where I was then asked to be quiet because I thought I was listening to Nicki Minaj, but in fact it was just me slaughtering the lyrics to an imaginary beat. Slaughtering the lyrics to an imaginary beat. Amazing. While having dental work done under the influence of laughing gas, I, female, mid-teens at the time, tried very hard to flirt with the, also female, married, dentist. I was not in any way subtle. She was not at all amused. Awkward. Also, not anesthesia but dilaudid. I called my husband from the once, rambling about how totally amazing it was that we have fingers, they're so helpful, and they're like, always there. They're like little friends that you get to carry around with you everywhere. It didn't take him too long to figure out they had me high as a kite, but he was super confused at first. I got my wisdom teeth out too. Had an IV. For the first time, I was 16 yo. All I remember was feeling great. I mean seriously amazing. When I sorta came to, I remember asking how much longer till it's over, and they said we're done. The nurse brought me out to the car with my parents and helped me out to the car, and on the car ride home I asked why the nurse was so friendly. My parents told me that I confessed my love for short-haired brunettes, and that she would be my wife because she was perfect and I loved her. Haha, I had no game at the time. If it makes you feel better, I told my 60-year-old surgeon I loved him. When my sister had her wisdom teeth out a few years previously, she also told him she loved him. Dr. F must think we're a weird family. I had a lump removed from my boob a few years ago. The table they had me on was shaped like a T, so my arms were outstretched. As I was passing out, I said to the nurses, "I feel like Jesus." They had to tell me about it when I awoke. I sang "You Are My Sunshine" at the top of my lungs while being wheeled into the recovery room after my knee surgery. My dad, along with my now ex-husband, could hear me clear across the other end of the hallway, even through the snickers and giggles of the nurses. The surgeon still calls me Sunshine when we see each other around town. Your town must be really small if you manage to bump into your surgeon. Not a doctor but an EMT. When I was doing my clinical rotations, there was a lady who was in a room yelling about how she knows who she is. She stated her full name, age, height, weight, where she was and why. I thought she was completely lucid until she started shouting, "I ain't no prostitute, but can I sell this pee?" There was another guy that also seemed pretty lucid in the emergency room, but then he said, "Can someone tell Emmy why the guy next to Emmy is pregnant? It's freaking Emmy out." On the other side, when I got my tonsils removed, the doctor said we call this Jackson juice, as he hooked up the anesthesia to the IV, because this is what Michael Jackson killed himself with. I then woke up with no tonsils. We gave that to a guy for a dislocated shoulder so we could get it back in. Dude's heart rate went from 140 to 35 in about 2 minutes. I understand why MJ died on it. When I woke up from surgery, I was hitting on all the nurses. Young, old, man, woman, didn't matter. Everyone got called beautiful that day. Captain Jack Harkness, nice to meet you. Not me, but my friend got knocked unconscious and hurt her neck, so they gave her some pain medications. When they took her for a CT, she was asking why, and the nurse told her they had to take a picture of her brain, and she asked if she should smile. That's cute as crap. My boyfriend, as he was being wheeled into recovery, yelled to me, "Honey, you can call me Shrek from now on." He has no idea why he wanted me to call him Shrek. I had to have surgery a few months later, and when I had woken up, I called my boyfriend on the hospital phone and told him he could call me Fiona from now on. After I got my teeth removed and woke up, I had an uncontrollable urge to drive. I had recently got my permit. I was like, "Let me drive, I want to go." My mom had to physically restrain me by putting her forearm against my throat against a wall. The nurse also had to help restrain me. I cooled down after like 5 minutes of this. I recently had open heart surgery. When you wake up, they give you a heart-shaped pillow to hold onto and put pressure on your chest, which feels amazing. When I woke up, I threw the pillow at my mum and told her that whoever came up with that idea was the most ridiculous person, and screaming that no one wants something on their chest after it's been broken. That pillow ended up being my favorite thing, and I kept it with me 24/7 for a couple of weeks. Haha, I remember that. After I woke up from my open heart surgery, I apparently demanded to see my father, and when he moved into view, I glared at him and said, "You fricking lied to me. This hurts like a mother." Not a doctor, but my girlfriend broke her ankle pretty badly in April. I showed up in the ER shortly after she'd arrived, and had to step out briefly so that the nurses could set the bones back. They had to give her something pretty intense for the pain. Believe it was ketamine. I came back in after it was done, and hilarity ensued. She forgot repeatedly that she'd even broken her ankle. She constantly worried that she was swearing too much. There was a little boy in the next bed, which she was not. She thought that reality had broken and that there were 8 universes all at once. Yeah, ketamine makes you trip. I bet she had a great time. Not a doctor, but a roller derby girl who witnessed teammate break their leg. When the paramedics gave her the whistle of pain relief, she went from screaming in pain to saying, "I hope that cute paramedic has to cut off my pants cause he might like what he sees," made more hilarious by the fact she is married act. When I woke up after my appendectomy, my mom says that I couldn't stop talking about how I no longer was wearing underwear. I then proceeded to tell every person who came to see me in the hospital that I was not wearing underwear for the next 8 hours. I had surgery for endometriosis. Sucked, but it is what it is. So there I am, just coming out of the anesthesia, and my hands are just going everywhere, like they have a mind of their own. I was rubbing my face and mumbling, and then I felt an itch by my pubic area. So naturally I tried to scratch it. I then realized that they shaved my pubes. I began crying and moaning about how my pubes were gone, that it was going to take forever to grow them back, and that I really missed them. At one point I believe I was sobbing that they needed to put them back on me. I'm really fun after surgeries and epidurals. I remember another one like that in another thread. A Scottish guy got his pubes shaved me his operation and said something along the lines of, "Dad, they shaved me pubes." Obligatory, not a doctor, but when my friend woke up from general anesthesia after his kidney stone removal surgery, he turned to the anesthesiologist, locked eyes, and dead straight mumbled, "Did you break my dongus?" The poor guy has to excuse himself from the room, he was laughing so hard. Never came back. My friend's sister was slowly waking up after a surgery and was still a bit out of it from the meds. Her family came into the room and asked how she was feeling, and her response was, "I feel fine, but man, that nurse is a bee." as the nurse was standing next to her. Luckily the nurse was able to laugh about it with them. I was on a crap ton of laughing gas and deluded after a nearly botched C-section with my youngest kid, and told the nurse she was a T-barnacle and gave the poor girl the finger. My mom said she laughed about it, but I guess I was mad and thought they were laughing at me. I was apparently angry because I couldn't have spaghetti right that second. When I got my tonsils removed, I woke up from my anesthesia in the general post-op area. It took me a while to wake up, but when I did, from some reason just started yelling I am alive, I am alive, and want hash browns and not stopping. I had to get out into a private room because other patients and families were getting worried about a patient yelling I am alive, I am alive, alive, alive with bits of who has hash browns. I eventually started pronouncing hash browns into hasher browns. The nurses were trying to keep me from yelling because I just got my tonsils removed and said I would be in a lot more pain if I did not stop yelling. This made me yell more. They were both concerned but also laughing so hard they had to leave the room. From what my boyfriend told me, I was in so much pain when the drugs wore off. LPT. Do not yell after tonsillectomy. TLDR. After tonsil surgery, screamed I am alive, I am alive, and want hash browns. Had to be wheeled to private post-op room because I was scaring patients and families. When I got appendicitis, they gave me Dilaudid because it felt like someone was trying to burn a sharp bulb out of my lower stomach. I remember going from screaming crying from the pain to telling my boyfriend I feel like I am being hugged by a cloud, which is what I thought I said, but in reality he said I just murmured cloud hugs. He did a WTF face and then said I starting swaying side to side with my arms crossed saying cloud hugs and humming. TLDR. Got appendicitis while on Dilaudid. Tried to tell my boyfriend I feel like I am being hugged by a cloud, but in reality had my arms crossed while swaying said cloud hugs. Not a doctor, but my best friend broke his collarbone, and here is a list of the best things he said. We walk into the emergency room and he is saying hello to everyone, then he sees this nurse and blurts out, "Wow, you are very attractive." Anytime we were alone together he would whisper, moreover yelled in a whisper to me about how much he wanted to frick this girl he had a crush on. Do you think lunch boxes are sad when they are empty? Crap man, I'm so freaking frisky. The ambulance driver was sitting right next to him when he said this. I love my grandmother so much, she is so lovely. Have you met her? Wow, she is great. He was talking to a nurse, not me. Oh my god, the lunch boxes. Underwent a procedure that required sedation with ketamine. I screamed for half an hour in the post-op area. I scared the patients and fought off the staff. Little 5 foot tall me. When I stopped tripping, the staff told me that they had to use enough sedatives and Dilaudid to take down a grown man 3 times my size. What I've gotten so far from this thread. Ketamine is crazy crap. My mom has a sort of cute one. After a recent surgery she woke up crying and asking for my dad. 31 years of marriage and still stupid in love with each other. There's a cute video online where a woman goes in to see her husband after surgery. He tells her that she's the most beautiful person he's ever seen, not aware that she's his wife. She breaks the news that they are married and he says, I hit the jackpot. Apparently when I was getting my septum fixed, I yelled at the doctor for lying to me about how the stuff prior to the anesthesia would taste. That was not a banana, you liar. Have you eaten a banana before? Then post surgery I reportedly burst into tears over a particularly heartwarming episode of In the Night Garden because the Tombliboos couldn't find their toothbrushes. My dad thought this was all great fun. Finally was abandoned by family, at which point I asked some poor nurse to give me my phone, and everyone in my recent contacts list got selfies, focused on my nose, followed by messages about how these drugs were funny. I was 21. Had my gallbladder removed. Pre-surgery I'm a nervous wreck. I just could not stop talking. I explained, in detail, about how I'm bad with pain and will possibly need more pain meds as a result. However, acknowledged that I have no professional training and would trust their judgments. They'd given me something to prevent blood clots and something else. Turns out that something else was something to help me relax, and it had turned me into a chatterbox. When I had 2 molars removed, the first one shattered, or something, and a specialist had to be called in. I was high as a kite and he's introduced himself as Dr. Jesse whatever. I've internalized my hello, pleasure to meet you in verbalized Hannah science. B. Instead of doing things the other way around. I also remember being really proud of myself for breathing, because I was told for over an hour, while high, that I was doing a good job of breathing. Upvote for Hannah science. B totally made my morning. Not a doctor, but I woke up in recovery because someone was moaning. Me, a doctor, was bent over the patient next to me. I was patting his butt saying it's okay you're waking up, it's okay shhhh. Patient with history of drug and alcohol abuse heavily sedated on intensive care unit. This is the best freaking party I've ever been to. Mostly not doctors, but who am I to be left behind by the bandwagon? When I got my wisdom teeth out, the only thing I recall was trying to signal to the nurse to use the saliva suction thing, but since I was drugged up and my mouth was full of surgical tools, I decided to sign language fingerspell, the closest word I could think of, which was vacuum, over and over. I spelled it wrong. Props for doing something sort of intelligent. After I got my wisdom teeth out, I lined up all the health food cereal and knocked it onto the floor while crying out, "This is bird food, mom." I mean, you're not wrong. I had an abdominal surgery and as soon as I woke up the doctor wasn't showing me pictures of my insides and talking to me. As most of you know, the first time you wake up is not the only time. Every time I woke up I asked to see the pictures. Finally at about the 8th time I asked my mom if the doctor had been in and she let me know she was counting how often I wanted to see them. Not very exciting, but just a constant "is it done? Let me see." After I had my wisdom teeth out I asked if I could paint butterflies on the mailbox. I don't know why. Sorry, not a doctor, but this was shortly after I got my wisdom teeth out. I was apparently fine, at home, going to get in bed, and I called my then boyfriend in a panic because there was a small town on my blanket and I didn't want to crush it. Like most, not a doctor, but when I was given something right before I was wheeled in for a colonoscopy and upper GI scope, I loudly threw the hall with patience. Told the nurse to warn the doctor that the internet had led me to believe my butthole was slightly higher than normal, and I was concerned he would get lost. I was heavily mocked after the procedure, and totally deserved every moment of it. This one is probably my favorite. I can't stop laughing. Not a doctor, but I kept asking if this was the stuff followed by "oh yeah, this is the stuff." The stuff was what they give you before anesthesia. When they brought me in the OR and went to put the mask on me I pushed them away and asked, "Is this the stuff that puts me to sleep?" They said no but proceeded to put the mask on and my last words to them were, in a giggly voice, "MHMM. Okay, bye." The stuff you referred to made me silly drunk. Apparently when the surgical team asked me to scoot from the gurney onto the operating table, I complained that, not only was this spa's service subpar, but those were definitely not 500 thread count cotton sateen sheets. Then when they put the mask on I said it smelled like vanilla. I had a surgery a few months back and my mum said that when I was being wheeled to the recovery room I kept shouting "marijuana is the spice of life" at everyone. The profit we need. This happened to me a few years ago and my twin sister will never let me live it down. I had just been put under for getting my wisdom teeth extracted. Apparently, when I woke up, I told the cab driver on the way home that we had to go to a pet store. No exceptions. My twin and taxi driver were so intrigued that they just let me do this. When we arrived at the pet store, I opened the door and ran to the chinchillas. I spent the next 20 minutes or so petting and whispering to the chinchillas like a club kid on an ecstasy cocktail. Then my sister dragged me out. Taxi driver had turned off the meter and was laughing in the pet store with my sister, watching me, and she had the taxi guy drive us home. I got my appendix taken out, and the doctor told me to say goodbye to my wife before the surgery. She said, "I love you." I said, "I know." She did not find it that funny. The doctor chuckled though. "I'm surprised your wife didn't stick you in carbonite." Was getting tonsils removed I think, and put under anesthesia, and the dentist was wearing one of those colorful shirts with butterflies on it. I apparently was super into those butterflies and poked her breasts the entire operation saying, "What pretty butterflies." Somehow, mom was semi-impressed. I recently got surgery on my foot, and while I was still high my mother recorded me saying things like, where's my freaking foot? Mom, the communist took my foot. Where's my foot? All I have is a snub. Those freaking communists took my foot and left me with a snub. I got pee because they didn't have Coke but dad Pepsi. Pepsi? Who the freaking heck drinks Pepsi? Frick Pepsi. Called the nurse Samantha. Her name was Brittany. Yelled nobody named Susan. Claimed to have 9 children. Apollo and Dante being my favorite 2. And Susan being my least favorite child who I have locked in the basement. We don't have a basement. Cried because I had to pee and sang a parody version of Set Me Free from the TV show The Get Down called Let Me Pee. Cried because I wanted freaking chicken nuggets. When asked how I was going to eat them because I was high, I said something about ripping them up into pieces and putting them in a bowl of honey mustard, then I'll eat it like soup. You had me at Let Me Pee. D. Had an operation on my nose. Woke up post-surgery high as a kite. As the nurse talked me into consciousness, I proceeded to tell her how I am planning to propose to my boyfriend. The first I had heard of this, she kindly told me how sweet I was, at which point I began to hit on her by telling her how stunningly beautiful she was. I'm gay. Finally, my time to shine. When I was 13 I was in ICU for a long time and was just coming out of a coma when this occurred. For reference, I was just about the shyest kid you'd ever meet. Obviously I don't remember this, but it's been confirmed by my mother and plenty of nurses that at one point, not long after waking up from my coma, I sat straight up, looked my nurse in the eye and said, "Hey you, I'm gonna frick your boyfriend later. Also should be noted I'm a lesbian." Looks like I'm the only doctor who has responded to this so far. For general anesthesia and even conscious sedation, people don't usually say funny things. Most people's funny comment stories are from being on pain medications, which is analgesia, not anesthesia. I literally sedate people all the time and they just pass out. Now, people with hospital delirium, those stories are funny. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.